So let's talk about Conundrum Issue 1. So, essentially I had this book for like a long time, but I just never really bothered to review it. I had it for like months, but like it's been on the back burner, and I finally had time to go into it like in depth, so that's why I'm finally reviewing it, so yeah. But obviously before we get into the review or like the contents of the book, I just want to talk about what is Conundrum, because I'm sure that most of you have heard of it or something. I mean, Murphy's has been advertising it recently, but so I'm just gonna go over like what it is. So it is a Montreal-based, I believe, independent magic magazine. So it doesn't really have funding from like the bigger companies. So it started off as a passion project from the two editors, so Marc Trudel and Sophie Anne Vachon. And it has irregular release dates, and there's only physical copies, and I believe in this issue there's 96 pages long. It kind of starts off from page 3 because they count the book covers, but so there's 96 pages of content in the book, right? So yeah, that's that. So let's go over the contents of the book. There's quite a bit, so I might just briefly go over them. So there's obviously a foreword by both Marc Trudel and Sophie Anne Vachon, and it sort of explains like the purpose of the magazine and like the story behind it. I think it's pretty interesting. Next, we have a list of like magical items. So these are just like random items that you see like every day that are magical. They're not necessarily like magic, so that's the thing. Next, we have a page dedicated to Wes Barker's second playing card. So that's like a deck of cards that's like a parody of Chris Ramsey's first playing cards. Next, we have a quote. Yeah, it's just a quote. And then we have an unpublished slight by Ernest Eric. So if you don't know who Ernest Eric is, he's the guy who wrote By Forces Unseen. Well, it was written by Stephen Minch, but his material is in By Forces Unseen. And then next we have a variation on that Ernest Eric slight by Derek Chung. If you don't know who Derek Chung is, I don't really blame you. He's more of a underground magician. He's a respected Montreal magician. And yeah, he helps out Shane Cobalt's Patreon. And fun fact, he's actually a teacher at my old school. I won't say the name of the school because that's probably gonna dox us both, but that's the thing. Next, we have an advice column for magic creativity. And then we have Cap No Cap Sharpie by Alex Boyer. It's basically like this pseudo hypnotism routine where the spectator can't like read Cap the Sharpie, but like the magician can. And then we have an interview by all of the big trick energy guys. So Wes Barker, Alex Boyer, Eric Leclerc, and Chris Ramsey. So all four of the guys behind Big Trick Energy. So those are interviews, right? And then we have a routine by Jeff Hinchliffe. I don't know how to pronounce it, but if you're familiar with my channel, I have mentioned him a couple of times throughout, like maybe in the comments or something, right? So he's a Toronto-based magician who works for Browser's Den of Magic. So if you don't know, so if you're in the Toronto area and you don't know like where to go, then I highly recommend you visit Browser's Den of Magic. Jeff is a really knowledgeable guy, and he has the chops for it. So yeah. And so, yeah, let's go back to Soulmates. So it is an anniversary waltz type effect that's ungimmicked. And so the signatures vanish from other cards and reappear together on a single card. So, it's Jeff Hinchliffe. And if you don't know who he is, then, I highly recommend you search him up. Next, we have a list of objects with the word magic in it, but aren't necessarily magic related. So they're more like they force you to look for magic in mundane everyday items, which I think is a pretty cool concept. Next, we have an interview with a Brazil-based magician named Bernardo Silecek. I'm sorry if I butchered it. I'm really sorry. But he's probably going to become, the next like big face of, I want to say, Spanish-style magic. So obviously we've had Ascanio Tamariz and Denny de Ortiz, and I say like he's a pretty rising star of that particular style of magic. So if you're not familiar with his work, then you should go search him up. Next, we have a handling of a certain false shuffle that I'm not gonna name because I feel like that'll give away the method in case I perform it. But yeah, he has a Spanish style variation of that particular shuffle. If you're not familiar with it, then you know that's yeah. I mean, you could go ahead and search it up on Conjuring Archive. They have it listed, but you know, I'm not personally gonna name it out because yeah, you're gonna skin the demo. And I feel like that's going to give away the method, so you know, I'm not going to say it. Next, we have a segment on how to create like a visual cohesive universe by Sophie Anne Vachon. So you know, Sophie Anne Vachon is one of the editors of the magazine, and she's in charge of all like the design aspects and the photography and whatnot. So you know, it's really cool. Next, we have a trick by Eric Leclerc. So it's called Chug Chug Goose. It's gonna be kind of explicit, but it's basically you have a bottle of vodka. You're gonna pour shots, pour like a shot to give it to like an audience member as like a celebration. And instead of pouring a shot glass for yourself, you're just gonna chug down the entire vodka bottle by yourself, and you're not gonna turn out to be drunk or have liver failure if you're, you know, consume too much alcohol. But yeah, so Room Clan has his own variation that's like detailed in the back. So that's yeah, that's cool. But yeah. Next, we have an unpublished Ed Marlowe trick called Where's My Sandwich? And it's basically a follow-up to a sandwich effect where the sandwich cards, they so the jokers and the selection, they turn to the 4 aces, and then the sandwich cards, they transpose to the center of the deck, right? So this was unpublished, and I believe they got the permission of Bill Goodwin to publish it in the magazine. So again, that's really cool. Next, we have a section dedicated to you know, magic guilty pleasures. So everyone who was interviewed in this magazine, they got to, you know, have a nice little section dedicated to them to detail like magic guilty pleasures. So this can be something like, yeah, I actually like sponge and balls or something like that. It's just whatever, right? That's not like an actual answer, but yeah, that's a section. I don't know what I was saying before, but yeah. Next, we have a section dedicated to Stéphane Lacasse and his card gambling museum. So if you don't know who Stéphane Lacasse is, I don't really blame you. He runs Slim Card Co. And Slim Card Co. is essentially a shop dedicated to gamblers' gaff cards. So he has basically creates like custom playing cards, gaffed playing cards. So if you're looking for like really precise stripper decks, negative strippers, belly strippers, maybe a juice deck, for example, you can go to Slim Card Co. and you can get like a custom order made. So that's really cool. Next, we have Sticky Hand Job by Chris Ramsey and Daniel Garcia. So they both worked on it. And it's basically where a selection's lost, you throw, the spectator throws the deck in the air. And you have like one of those like sticky like hand things, and you just snipe it. So snipe the selection out of the air. So again, it's cool in concept, but I'm not gonna comment on the name of the trick. Next, we have A Guide to Creativity by Marc Trudel. And then we have a Everyday I'm Shuffling by Derek Chung. So the guy who worked on like the Ernest Eric stuff. So he made a Rubik's Cube false shuffle. So that's Derek Chung's thing. Next, we have interviews by Grant McSorley and Derek Chung. So they're basically a comedy duo that fuses like comedy with sleight of hand. So that's pretty cool. And they're interviewed like separately. Next, we have 3 tips on how to perform sleight of hand. Oh, no. 3 tips on how to perform for kids, not like specifically sleight of hand. But yeah, so that's by kid magician Ghislain Lavoie. And then we have a routine by him called It's Nothing. So again, by Ghislain Lavoie. It's basically a closure for a show where you show like 2 like chalkboards. And you just slam them together, and then like words appear, and you slam them together again, and like 2 words appear. Well, the words transform. So yeah. Next, we have reviews for magic products by Marc Trudel. These aren't necessarily new magic products, but they're reviews nonetheless. And then we have Derek Chung's most prized possession, Postscript by Marc Trudel, and then a picture of magic in popular media. So that was a lot of contents to go through, but for that price, for that amount of contents, we got, it's $40 Canadian and $30 USD. I believe it is free shipping for Canadians, so yeah, that's that's good. But there's several pros and cons that I like to go through regarding the book before you make a decision on where to buy it or not. So, I mean, generally, it is a well-produced and well-designed book. It's, yeah, I mean, it's soft cover, so I don't really mind soft cover books. I mean, books are meant to be read anyways, but the pages aren't necessarily glossy, but again, I don't really mind that. The cover itself is in this really weird, like, matte finish. So yeah. And obviously, there's like custom designs and artwork, and so yeah, that's pretty cool. Next, we have a large assortment of materials. So obviously, you don't just have card tricks. I mean, the majority of it is card tricks, but you have the very mature vodka trick, and then you also have like this the Sharpie trick and a Rubik's Cube false shuffle. So yeah. And then I also like that highlights lesser known magicians. I mean, obviously there's gonna be like the big names, but there are still people who are less well known that I'm glad that they're highlighting in this book, right? And then we have insightful interviews. So yeah, they break it down like the process of becoming a magician, and whether it's really as like glorious or whatever as you thought before. And yeah, so there's also there's also a fair amount of unpublished material in this book. I mean, it's really cool that they got the rights for it, so I'm really glad that, you know, it's the first time like some material has been seen in day, right? Now, with that said, there are two main cons that I want to highlight, and the first highlight is that they say that there is no filler, but some of the things I do want to argue about, like the definition of filler. So there is two lists of items of like magical items or like of cool items, which I think is a bit redundant, but obviously that's just me. But it's just like two lists is a bit too much, I think. The second list was fine because it's sort of like there's like an after word for it, for like pushing creativity, for pushing like looking for magic beyond like the ordinary. But I searched for like the first list, there wasn't really like a foreword for that, so, or like a afterword for that. So I mean, that's yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that I think are redundant, but that's fine. Now, for some of the things that are published in this book, it does require prior knowledge of moves. So, for example, the Ernest Eric stuff, they briefly touch on it, but I don't think that it's enough for anyone to actually work on. We have the False Shuffle by Bernardo Sidlacsek. It's you know, it does require prior knowledge of moves again. So yeah, generally I wouldn't recommend this for really beginner magicians. I'd say it's more for intermediate and advanced magicians. So the final verdict of the book, so review, basically my section, finally, my words, finally. So if you're looking purely for methods and magic secrets, you're going to be disappointed, right? There's no like getting around that. But I do really like this book because it highlights that magic is more than just secrets, right? It's about the people, the experiences, right? Their insight. So there's a lot of that in the in this magazine, right? It highlights people, their interests, like they're very interested, right? So I do like that it highlights more than just secrets beyond magic, right? And more than that, it's just fun. It's a breath of fresh air when every like other magic magazine just details methods and theory, and then we have a magic magazine that's just genuinely fun and that's trying to have fun, and that knows that it's not taking itself too seriously. So I genuinely do like this magazine. But if you're looking for secrets, again, you're going to be disappointed. But again, there are some unpublished things in there, so If you are looking for secrets, then you know that's there's some published stuff, but generally I'd say you should go into it with the mindset of having fun and just leisure reading rather than studying. But with that said, I'd say like I wouldn't actively recommend this book. I'd say like if anyone was coming up to me and asking like, oh, should I buy this book? I'd say yeah, absolutely, right? But I wouldn't actively recommend it. But with that said, I'd say, you know, final verdict, it's a good book, wouldn't actively recommend it, but I still do really like it. And that's about it for this video. Yeah, Conundrum, there's a pretty long list of items. Yeah, so, I mean, 96 pages long. I'm not going to do that for every single book. Yeah, I thought it would be a bit shorter because it's a magazine, but you know, it's more of a book, really. I've seen like magic lecture notes that are like smaller than this, so you know, it's really cool. But yeah, so that's about it for this video. I'll put a link down in the description on where to buy Conundrum, and yeah, see you guys next time.